Moonlight spilled through the towering stained-glass windows of Blackthorn Keep's ancient scriptorium, fracturing into shards of silver and crimson across the marble floor. Dust motes drifted lazily in the cold air, catching the light like tiny ghosts. The scent of old parchment, melted wax, and fresh blood hung heavy. Elara stood in the center of the chamber, her back to Lord Cashin Voss. The thin grey wool of her servant's gown had been pulled down to her waist, bearing skin that should never have seen such violence. Dark wavy hair cascaded forward, veiling her face, but it could not hide the tremor in her shoulders or the way her bare feet curled against the icy stone. Behind her, Cashin loomed, broad, immovable, clad in black velvet trimmed with wolf fur that brushed the floor like a shadow. His storm-grey eyes, ancient and unreadable, traced the map of suffering etched across her back, pale ridges of old cuts, circular burns from heated signet rings, fresh welt still glistening crimson from tonight's accident. He stepped closer. One bootfall echoed like a verdict. His scarred hand rose, hovering just above the newest wounds as though the heat radiating from them might sear his palm. "These marks," he said, voice low and lethal, vibrating through the stone itself, "are not from one night." Elara did not flinch. She had unlearned flinching years ago. "No, my lord," she whispered, amber eyes fixed on the floor. "They are from 5 years. 5 years of silence. 5 years of calculated cruelty delivered by the golden, untouchable Lady Seraphine Voss, his consort, the clan's perfect jewel. It had begun with one fleeting glance Cashin had spared a quiet servant girl in the lower halls, one moment of idle curiosity that Seraphine had twisted into mortal threat. Tonight, Seraphine had finally overreached. Tonight, the lie had cracked wide open. Tonight, Elara had been dragged from the consort's chambers in silver chains, accused of daring to strike the Lady of Blackthorn Keep. And tonight, Cashin Voss had come to the crypt cells himself, expecting a violent criminal, finding instead a woman whose body bore witness to prolonged, deliberate torture. His fingertips hovered over a burn shaped like the crescent crest of his own house. He did not touch her. "Who did this?" he asked, though fury already thundered beneath the words. Elara drew a slow breath, tasting copper and candle smoke. "Lady Seraphine, my lord," she said, voice soft but steady as winter steel. "Every mark you see was placed there by your consort's hand." The silence that followed swallowed the keep whole. A lone candle guttered overhead, shadows writhing across the walls like restless spirits. Cashin's jaw clenched beneath his dark beard. When he spoke again, winter itself seemed to answer. "Then the Lady of Blackthorn Keep," he said, each word carved from ice and vengeance, "has much to answer for." For the first time in 5 years, the darkness around Elara felt a fraction less absolute. Because for the first time in 5 years, someone with the power to end it had finally seen her scars, and believed them. The candlelight in Lady Seraphine's chambers burned low, throwing long golden flickers across mirrors and silk. Elara knelt on the cold stone before the vanity, her fingers working with practiced precision through the consort's pale gold hair. Each strand had to lie exactly as Seraphine demanded, waves perfect, braids intricate, not one hair out of place for tonight's winter solstice reception. Seraphine watched her in the mirror, ice-blue eyes sharp as winter glass. She was beautiful the way a glacier is beautiful, flawless, cold, and capable of crushing anything beneath it. "You're slow tonight," Seraphine said, voice soft as falling snow and twice as dangerous. "Forgive me, my lady." Elara kept her gaze lowered, amber eyes fixed on the golden strands between her fingers. "I will finish quickly." A pause. Then the heated curling rod, left too long in the brazier, lifted from its stand. Elara smelled the iron before she felt it. The hiss of flesh came a heartbeat later, pressed deliberately against the inside of her forearm. Pain bloomed white-hot. She bit the inside of her cheek until she tasted blood, refusing to cry out. Sound only ever encouraged Seraphine. "Careless girl," Seraphine murmured, lifting the rod to admire the perfect crescent burn it had left, shaped, of course, like the blackthorn crest. You might have ruined my hair. Ilara's hands did not shake as she resumed braiding. They never did anymore. 5 years of practice had taught her body how to move through agony as if it were ordinary. Through the mirror, Seraphine's reflection smiled, sweet, practiced, the expression she wore for the clan. To the elders, to the visiting lords, to Cashin himself, she was grace incarnate. The perfect consort, elegant, devoted, essential to the fragile alliances that kept Blackthorn keep strong against rival clans. Only here, in these private chambers, did the mask slip. The burn on Ilara's arm throbbed in rhythm with her pulse, joining the gallery of older marks hidden beneath long sleeves, parallel lines from a silver-tipped crop, circular brands from signet rings, thin white scars from broken glass swept carelessly across her skin. A silent archive of nights just like this one. Memory came unbidden, as it always did when pain was fresh. She was 15 again, huddled in the root cellar of a remote mountain cottage while storm winds howled outside. Her mother's hand over her mouth, muffling her breathing. Stay still, little star. No matter what you hear, stay still. Her father had stood at the door, broad and unafraid, silver blade in hand. Rogue vampires, feral, blood-mad things cast out from every clan, had come in the night. Ilara had felt her gift stir for the first time, a sudden, overwhelming flood of malicious intent pressing against her mind like black water. She had tried to warn them. Tried to force the words out. But fear had locked her throat. The rogues broke through. Her father fought like a storm. Her mother shifted into shadow and struck from darkness. For a moment, Ilara believed they might win. Then the screaming started. Something inside her had answered, a surge of power she didn't understand, a clairsentient gift awakening under mortal terror. She felt her body begin to dissolve into mist and shadow, the rarest and most coveted of vampire transformations. Bones lightened, skin prickled with ethereal energy. Halfway through the change, her father's throat was torn open. Her mother's final cry pierced the night. The gift seized. Pain exploded through every nerve as the transformation reversed violently, slamming her back into solid form. Something fundamental shattered. The gift folded inward, blocked behind walls of grief and trauma too vast for a child to bear. The rogues left her curled among the bodies, assuming the half-shifted girl was already dead. She had lain there until dawn, then wandered the mountains for days, half-mad with loss, until old Marta, a kitchen drudge with a soft heart, found her collapsed in the snow near Blackthorn's outer wall. Marta had seen the amber flicker in her eyes, had caught the faint trace of power beneath blood and dirt. She had smuggled the girl inside, fed her, and warned her in a whisper, never let them know what you are. A vampire who can't complete the mist shift is seen as defective. They'll treat you worse than a blood thrall. So Ilara became human in everyone's eyes. Silent, efficient, invisible. She worked in the kitchens for 7 years, head down, surviving. Then came the night everything changed. Lord Cashin Voss had returned early from a border skirmish, striding into the lower halls with snow on his cloak and weariness in his ancient grey eyes. For 3 heartbeats, only 3, his gaze had landed on the quiet girl chopping herbs at the long table. Something had shifted in his expression. Not desire, not pity. Simple curiosity. Recognition, perhaps, of eyes too old for such a young face. Seraphine had been passing through the corridor. She had seen it. The next morning, Ilara was summoned to serve as the lady's personal attendant. That was 4 years and 11 months ago. Marta had tried to protest once, 2 years in. She had gone to a trusted guard with whispers of suspicious injuries. The guard was reassigned to the most dangerous northern watchtower the next night. A young scullery maid who had befriended Ilara vanished entirely. The message was clear, speak, and others pay. So the abuse continued in perfect silence. There, Seraphine said now, admiring the elaborate style in the mirror. Tolerable. She rose in a rustle of sapphire silk, turning to inspect Alara fully. Her gaze lingered on the fresh burn, satisfaction flickering across perfect features. Fetch my cloak. The silver fox won. Yes, my lady. Alara moved to the wardrobe, each step measured despite the fire in her arm. Inside her chest, something ancient stirred, her blocked gift pressing against invisible barriers, sensing the malice that lived behind Seraphine's smile. It keened silently, desperate for release. But Alara pushed it down, as she always did. Better to remain broken and alive than to reveal the defect and invite worse. She lifted the heavy cloak from its hanger and turned back, face carefully blank. Seraphine was already humming, pleased with herself, anticipating the evening where she would descend the grand stairs radiant and adored, while Lord Cashin remained blind to the predator he had bound himself to. And Alara would be there in the shadows, invisible as always, carrying her scars in silence. But tonight, something felt different. The air carried a faint shift, like distant thunder on a clear night. Unbeknownst to either woman, Cashin Voss had returned from the borders 3 days early. And the winter solstice reception would not unfold quite as Seraphine planned. The sapphire silk tore with a sharp, deliberate rip just as Alara fastened the last hidden clasp at Lady Seraphine's spine. The sound cut through the chamber like a blade. Alara's fingers froze mid-motion. She knew that sound. She knew what came next. Seraphine whirled, ice-blue eyes blazing with theatrical fury. The gown, imported from the southern clan ports, worth more than a year's tribute from 3 border villages, now gaped along the seam, threads fraying like spilled blood. "You stupid, vicious creature," Seraphine hissed, voice low enough that no passing servant in the corridor would overhear. "Do you have any idea what this cost?" "My lady, Alara began, but the words died as Seraphine's hand cracked across her cheek, snapping her head to the side. The consort had already scratched her own cheek with a silver hairpin during the turn, a thin red line welling instantly. "Perfect evidence. You think I haven't seen the way you look at him?" Seraphine's voice dropped to venom. "You think I don't know what you are? A threat in servant's wool." Alara tasted blood where her tooth had cut the inside of her lip. "I have never." "Liar." Seraphine snatched the silver-tipped crop from her dressing table, the one she kept for correcting clumsiness, and brought it down hard across Alara's shoulders. The first strike tore through thin wool and skin alike. Alara staggered but did not fall. The second wrapped around her ribs. Pain flared bright and familiar. Something inside her, something that had remained obedient for nearly 5 years, snapped. Her hand came up without thought, catching Seraphine's wrist mid-swing. For one suspended heartbeat they stared at each other, the consort stunned that prey had dared resist, Alara shocked at her own defiance. Seraphine recovered first. She let her body go limp, allowing herself to stumble backward with a carefully rehearsed cry. The crop slipped from her fingers into Alara's free hand, placed there by a twist of the consort's wrist so swift no witness would ever believe it had been deliberate. "Guards!" Seraphine's scream echoed through the halls, pitched perfectly to carry. "Help! She's gone mad, she's trying to kill me." Boots thundered up the spiral stairs. The chamber door burst open. 4 armored sentries flooded in, silver blades drawn, eyes sweeping the scene. The elegant lady of Blackthorn crumpled on the floor, blood on her cheek, tears already glittering in her eyes, the servant girl standing over her, crop in hand, blood soaking the back of her torn gown. "Take her," the captain ordered. Rough hands seized Alara's arms. She did not struggle. There was no point. The story was already written in blood and silk. As they dragged her toward the crypt passages, she caught a final glimpse of old Marta in the doorway, the cook's weathered face drained of color, one trembling hand pressed to her mouth. Their eyes met for an instant. Alara tried to pour everything into that look, gratitude for the years of hidden kindness, a plea not to risk herself now. Then the shadows of the descending stairs swallowed her. The cells beneath Blackthorn Keep were carved from the mountain itself, damp stone that wept icy water, chains bolted into walls older than any living vampire. They locked her in the deepest one, silver manacles around her wrists to prevent any attempt at misshifting, though her gift had been silent for a decade. She sank to the straw-covered floor, back screaming with every movement, and waited for dawn. Clan law was ancient and absolute. A servant who raised hand against the consort, no matter the circumstance, faced only one penalty. Death by sunlight at the next sunrise. Far above, in the Lord's private study, Cassian Voss strode through the doors still dusted with border snow. He had ridden ahead of his warriors, eager to end months of skirmishes with rogue packs in the northern passes. Victor, his second and oldest friend, intercepted him in the corridor, face grim beneath the torchlight. "My lord," Victor said formally, "there has been an incident. Your presence is required at once." Cassian's cloak swirled as he stopped. "What kind?" "The Lady Seraphine was assaulted by her personal attendant. The girl is in the crypts awaiting execution at dawn." Cassian's brow furrowed. Seraphine had a talent for drama whenever he returned from campaign, elaborate scenes designed to draw his attention or sympathy. But assault? How gravely was she injured? A scratch to the face. Some bruising. Nothing requiring the healer's immediate care. Victor paused, choosing words carefully. "But my lord, you should see the girl first. There are inconsistencies. Clan law offered no mercy in such cases. A servant striking the consort was immediate execution, no trial, no appeal. It was one of the oldest statutes, meant to shield leadership from internal threats. Yet Victor did not question law lightly. Cassian's jaw tightened. "Take me to her. Now." The crypt cell was lit by a single torch that hissed in the damp. Alara sat in the corner, knees drawn to her chest, dark hair hiding most of her face. She looked small against the vast stone. At the sound of boots, she lifted her head. Amber eyes met his, eyes he remembered from years ago, from one brief moment in the lower halls. Cassian felt something ancient stir in his chest, a recognition he could not name. "Stand," he commanded, voice carrying the weight of centuries. She rose slowly, pain evident in every stiff movement. Blood had soaked through her gown in dark patches. Then he saw the rest. Not just tonight's wounds, but the others. Sleeves torn in the struggle revealed arms mapped with old burns, thin white scars, patterns that spoke of repetition, of intent. His breath caught. These were not the marks of one violent outburst. These were the marks of years. "Name," he said, voice rougher than he intended. "Alara Thorn, my lord. And you assaulted my consort." She swallowed, throat working around the truth. "I stopped her when she struck me. I only wanted the pain to end for a moment." Her voice was quiet, steady, devoid of pleading. "I accept whatever judgment you pass." She expected death. Accepted it with the calm of someone who had long ago stopped hoping for anything else. Cassian stepped closer, torchlight catching the gold in his storm-gray eyes. "Show me your back." A flicker of shame crossed her face, but she obeyed. Turning, she let the ruined gown fall forward. The torch revealed everything: fresh lashes crossing older scars, burn patterns deliberate and repeated, evidence of sustained, methodical cruelty. Something dark and furious uncoiled inside him. "How long?" he demanded. 5 years, my lord. Since I became her personal attendant. 5 years. The exact length of his political union with Seraphine. And no one had spoken. No one had come to him. He turned away abruptly, needing to master the rage before it mastered him. "You will be examined by the healer before sunrise," he said, the lie coming smoothly. It was not standard. But Victor would not question an alpha's word. Guards appeared at his gesture. "See it done. And treat her wounds in the meantime." As he left the crypts, torchlight flickering on stone walls older than memory, Cassian felt his world tilt on its ancient axis. Something here was fundamentally wrong. And he had been blind to it for far too long. In her cell, Elara finally allowed the tears to come. Silent, hot, tracking down her bruised cheek. Tomorrow she would burn. But tonight, for the first time, someone had looked at her scars and seen more than a criminal. Deep inside her chest, her blocked gift stirred with desperate, wordless grief, pressing against barriers built from a child's terror. She wrapped her arms around herself in the dark. "I tried to survive," she whispered to no one. "I really tried." But even survival, she was learning, had its breaking point. The torch in the crypt corridor sputtered, throwing restless shadows across damp stone. Cassian descended the narrow stairs alone, his cloak swept back over one shoulder, boots silent despite his size. Victor had offered to accompany him, but Cassian had refused. He needed to see this with no filter, no whispered counsel. The guard at the cell door straightened at his approach, surprise flickering across his face. Lords of Blackthorn rarely visited the crypts personally. "Open it," Cassian ordered. The iron lock grated. The door swung inward on ancient hinges. Elara sat in the far corner, knees drawn to her chest, dark hair curtaining most of her face. The single torch outside the bars painted her in orange and black. She looked small against the vast stone, but when she lifted her head at the sound, her amber eyes held no pleading, only weary acceptance. Recognition struck him again, sharper this time. The girl from the lower halls years ago. The one whose unusual eyes had caught his attention for 3 impossible heartbeats. The one Seraphine had requested as personal attendant the very next day. He had never questioned it. Political unions required trust, and he had given Seraphine the management of her household without interference. Now that blindness felt like a blade in his ribs. "Stand," he said, the command carrying the natural authority of centuries. She rose slowly, each movement stiff with pain. Blood had crusted dark along the tears in her gown. Silver manacles glinted at her wrists, standard for any prisoner suspected of misshifting, though hers had never manifested. Cassian stepped into the cell. The door clanged shut behind him, leaving them alone in the flickering light. He studied her openly now. The bruise blooming across her cheek from Seraphine's staged slap. The split lip. And then, as she shifted her weight, the way the fabric clung wetly to her back. "Turn around." A flicker of shame crossed her features, quickly hidden. She obeyed, presenting her back to him. "Lower the gown." Her hands hesitated at the neckline, then pulled the ruined wool forward. The fabric caught briefly on crusted blood before sliding down. Cassian's breath left him in a slow, controlled exhale. The torchlight revealed a tapestry of cruelty, fresh lashes from the silver crop crisscrossing older, faded ones, circular burns in deliberate patterns. He recognized some as the crescent crest of his own house, others as Seraphine's personal seal, thin white lines from blades or glass, evidence of starvation in the sharp outline of shoulder blades and ribs. These were not random injuries. They were methodical. Repeated. Sustained over years. His hands clenched at his sides. Ancient instinct surged, protective, possessive, furious in a way that had nothing to do with politics and everything to do with the woman standing silently before him. "How long?" he asked, voice rough as gravel. 5 years, my lord." Her answer came soft but steady. "Since the day Lady Seraphine requested me as her attendant." 5 years. The exact length of his union with Seraphine, a marriage brokered for southern trade routes and military alliance with her powerful birth clan. 5 years of this happening under his roof, and he had never seen. "You never reported it?" She pulled the gown back up, turning to face him. No accusation in her amber eyes, only resignation. "Who would have believed a servant over the consort, my lord?" "And those who tried," she trailed off, gaze dropping. "They disappeared. Or were sent to the northern watchtowers where the rogues hunt." Marta's attempted intervention. The missing scullery maid. He remembered the reports now, dismissed as coincidence or misfortune. Clan law protected hierarchy above all. Servants existed to serve. Consorts existed to strengthen the bloodline. Questioning one risked everything. Yet the evidence on her skin rewrote every assumption. "And tonight," he pressed. She tore her own gown. Scratched her face. "Put the crop in my hand when I stopped her from striking again." Elara lifted her chin slightly, the first hint of strength breaking through exhaustion. "I know what the law demands. I accept it. Only, please let my ashes be scattered in the wind, not left for the crows. My parents deserved better than I could give them. Grant me that much." The mention of parents struck something raw. He saw her then, not just the scars, but the grief behind them. A child who had lost everything, who had survived alone. Before he could second-guess the impulse, he spoke. "A healer will examine you before dawn." Surprise flickered across her face, the first crack in her composure. "That is, not required, my lord." "It is tonight." He turned to the door, hammering once with his fist. The guard opened it immediately. "Send for healer Isolde. Tell her it is by my direct order and she is to document everything." The guard's eyes widened, but he bowed and hurried away. Cashin faced Elara again. "Cooperate fully. And if you have lied about any of this," he let the threat hang, though even he knew it was hollow. "I am not lying, my lord." Her voice was soft, almost wondering. "I have done many things to survive. But lying has never helped me." He left the cell without another word, the door clanging shut behind him. The corridors blurred as he climbed toward the upper keep. Rage pulsed beneath his skin, cold and precise. His union with Seraphine had always been duty, never warmth. He had accepted her coldness as aristocratic reserve. Now he saw it for what it was, the glacier hiding a predator. Victor waited at the top of the stairs, expression carefully neutral. "The healer is on her way," Victor said. "What did you find?" "Enough to question everything." Cashin's voice was winter steel. "Begin discreet inquiries among the household staff. Anyone who served near the consort's chambers. And send word to the borders, delay my warriors' return by 2 days. I want no distractions." Victor inclined his head. "And the execution?" "Postponed until the healer's report." It was not mercy. Not yet. It was time to uncover how deep the rot went. In the cell below, Elara sank back to the straw, trembling now that she was alone. The pain in her back throbbed with every heartbeat, but something else throbbed too, a fragile, unfamiliar warmth. Someone had looked at her scars. Someone had listened. Deep inside her chest, her blocked gift stirred again, restless, grieving, pressing against walls built from a child's scream. She pressed a manacled hand over her heart. "I'm sorry," she whispered to the power trapped within. "I tried to keep us alive. But perhaps, just perhaps, survival was no longer all she had to hope for." Up in her chambers, Seraphine stood before her mirror, touching the shallow scratch on her cheek with satisfaction. By dawn the servant girl would burn, the threat removed forever. She smiled at her reflection, perfect and serene. She did not yet know that the Lord of Blackthorn Keep had already begun to see through the mask. The healer's chambers were high in the eastern tower, where narrow windows let in the first pale light of pre-dawn. Cassian stood at the threshold, arms crossed, watching as Isolde, an ancient vampire with silver-streaked hair and hands steady as stone, finished her examination. Ilara lay face down on the padded table, gown removed entirely now, a thin linen sheet preserving what little modesty the situation allowed. Torchlight and dawn combined to illuminate every mark on her skin with merciless clarity. Isolde's fingers traced the air above the wounds without touching, sensing energies older than flesh. Her expression grew graver with each passing minute. Cassian had not slept. After leaving the crypts, he had paced his study until Victor returned with the first whispered testimonies, a chambermaid who had seen Ilara emerge from Seraphine's rooms with fresh burns, a steward who noted that food sent to the consort's chambers never included portions for her attendant, Marta, tear-streaked, confirming years of hidden salves and extra bread. Piece by piece, the pattern emerged, undeniable, damning. Now Isolde straightened, pulling the sheet gently back over Ilara's shoulders. "Well?" Cassian demanded, voice low. The healer met his gaze without flinching. "The physical evidence is extensive. Repeated trauma over years, burns applied with heated metal, lacerations from silver implements, signs of chronic malnutrition and sleep deprivation. These are not accidents or self-inflicted wounds. They are deliberate, systematic." Cassian's jaw tightened. "And the other matter?" Isolde glanced at Ilara, who had remained silent and still throughout the examination. "There is a gift. Powerful. Clairsentient, the rare ability to sense intent, malice, danger before it manifests. It is blocked, not absent. Trapped behind severe childhood trauma. The night her family died, she began a mischief under mortal terror. The transformation ceased halfway when she witnessed their murder. The gift folded inward to protect her mind from shattering completely." Ilara's breath hitched, the first sound she had made in hours. Cassian felt the words like a blow. A mischief. One of the rarest gifts among their kind, coveted for scouting, espionage, silent assassination. A vampire who could dissolve into shadow and reform elsewhere was near invincible. And Seraphine had tortured her for 5 years to keep it buried. Everything changed in that moment. Under clan law, a human servant had few rights. But a vampire with a confirmed gift, no matter how blocked, was a full clan member. Entitled to protection, to trial, to challenge an accuser if she chose. Ilara was no longer a disposable servant facing summary execution. She was a witness with standing. Cassian turned to the guards waiting outside the door. "Escort her to the East Wing guest quarters. The largest suite. Post 4 sentries, for her protection, not imprisonment. She is to be treated as an honored guest. Any who question it answer to me." The guards bowed and moved to obey. Ilara pushed herself up slowly as Isolde helped her into a clean linen robe. Her amber eyes met Cassian's, wary, disbelieving. "Why?" she whispered. "Because the law now recognizes what you are." His voice was steady, but something fierce burned behind it. "And because I will not allow another sunrise to pass with you in chains." She was led away, footsteps echoing softly down the corridor. Cassian remained with Isolde. "How strong is the block?" "Deep," the healer replied. "Built from terror and grief when she was barely more than a child. But the gift is intact. Vital. With time and careful work, it could be freed." "Begin that work," he ordered. Discreetly. "No one outside this room is to know yet, not even Victor." Isolde inclined her head. By midday, Elara had been bathed, dressed in soft wool the color of storm clouds, and settled in quarters she had only ever cleaned for visiting lords. A fire burned in the grate. Food appeared, real portions, warm bread, roasted meat, winter apples. She ate slowly, as if expecting it to vanish. Marta arrived soon after, eyes red but fierce with relief. She hugged Elara carefully, mindful of healing wounds, and pressed a small jar of salve into her hands. "I knew he'd see," the old woman whispered. "Lord Cassian has honor, even if it's buried deep." Elara managed a trembling smile, the first and longer than she could remember. Cassian came in the evening, alone. He found her by the window, staring out at the snow-dusted peaks. The room's firelight caught in her dark hair, turning it to polished mahogany. "You are safe here," he said without preamble. "Seraphine believes this is standard procedure while the incident is reviewed. She does not know you have spoken. Does not know we investigate her." Elara turned. The robe hung loose on her frame, but her posture was straighter than it had been in years. "You believe me?" "Yes." The word carried absolute certainty. "I have seen the evidence. Heard the testimonies. And I have failed you by remaining blind to what happened in my own keep." She shook her head. "You could not have known." "I should have." He stepped closer, careful not to crowd her. "A lord who does not see suffering beneath his roof is no lord at all." Silence stretched, heavy but not uncomfortable. "What happens now?" she asked. "I build a case that even her birth clan cannot deny. Witnesses. Records. Your gift gives you standing to demand proper inquiry." He paused. "But I need time. Seraphine's father commands the southern trade routes. Accuse her without ironclad proof, and we risk war." Elara's fingers traced the windowsill. "She will suspect something when I do not burn at dawn. She will suspect procedure. Nothing more. Not yet." He moved to leave, then stopped. "Isolde believes your gift can be unbound. That with guidance, you might complete the mist shift." Fear flashed across her face. "I have not tried since that night. The pain when it seized will not be forced," he finished gently. "Only if you choose it. But if you could access your gift fully, it would change everything. Not just legally. For you." She looked at him for a long moment, amber eyes searching storm gray. "Why does it matter to you?" she asked quietly. "Whether I shift or not." Cassian felt the truth rise, dangerous, impossible. His ancient blood recognized hers in ways that defied politics and duty. But he could not say that. "Not yet. Because you have been denied what you are for too long," he said instead. "And because no one under my protection will remain in chains, seen or unseen." He left her then, the door closing softly behind him. In the corridor, Victor waited. "The household whispers grow," his second said. "Seraphine inquires why the execution was delayed. Let her inquire." Cassian's voice was winter night. "Double the watch on the east wing. And prepare riders for the southern borders. I want eyes on every move her father makes." Victor nodded. "And the girl?" Cassian's gaze turned toward the closed door. "She is no longer the girl. She is Elara Thorne, bearer of a mist gift. And she is under my protection. He did not say the rest, that something in his blood had begun to hum the moment he saw her scars fully. That his long dormant instincts whispered mine in a way they never had for Seraphine. But Victor, who had known him for centuries, saw it anyway. In her new chambers, Elara stood at the window long into the night. Snow began to fall, soft and silent. For the first time in 10 years, her blocked gift stirred not with pain, but with something perilously close to hope. And for the first time in 5 years, she slept without fear of what morning would bring. 3 weeks had passed since the night Elara's world cracked open. 3 weeks of guarded doors, quiet healings, and secrets gathering like storm clouds over Blackthorn's peaks. Cashin's investigation moved through the keep like mist itself, silent, pervasive, impossible to grasp. Victor coordinated it masterfully, late-night interviews in forgotten storerooms, sealed testimonies locked in iron strongboxes, riders dispatched to distant holdings in search of anyone who had once served Seraphine before her union to Blackthorn. The evidence grew heavier by the day. A former attendant from the Southern clan, fled 5 years ago under cover of night, sent word through discreet channels. She would testify, but only if promised protection. Cashin guaranteed it personally. Her written account arrived sealed in wax, 8 months of service marked by the same deliberate cruelties, burns hidden beneath high collars, silver pins accidentally drawn across skin, starvation disguised as fasting for beauty. The pattern was unmistakable. Within the keep, servants who had once averted their eyes now spoke in whispers when Victor passed. A laundress admitted to washing blood from the consort's crops far too often. A footman remembered carrying away shattered glass after clumsy accidents that always seemed to involve Elara. Even the steward of households produced ledgers showing that, for 5 years, no food allotments had ever been recorded for the consort's personal attendant, despite ancient custom requiring it. Each confession was recorded, witnessed, and hidden. Through it all, Cashin found himself drawn to the East Wing more evenings than he could justify with duty. He told himself it was to monitor her recovery. To ensure the guards were vigilant. To discuss the investigation's progress. But the truth was simpler and far more dangerous. He simply wanted to be near her. The first time he visited after her move to the guest quarters, Elara had stood by the fire, wrapped in a heavy robe, suspicion and wonder warring in her amber eyes. Over the weeks, suspicion had slowly yielded to something softer. She no longer flinched when he entered unannounced. She began to meet his gaze without immediately lowering it. Once, only once, she had even smiled, small and startled, when he brought her a book of mountain legends from his private library. Now, on a night when snow hissed against the windows, he found her seated at a small table, attempting to eat the full meal Marta had insisted upon. She managed half before pushing the plate away. "You need strength," he said from the doorway. Elara looked up. Firelight caught in her dark waves, turning them to living shadow. "My body forgot how to accept it. Years of less, it protests more." He crossed the room and sat opposite her, always careful to keep furniture between them, space she could control. "Isolde says your wounds are closing well. The silver burns will scar, but faintly." She nodded, fingers tracing the edge of the table. "She also says the block on my gift is shifting. That it responds when I speak of the past. Not enough to break through, but enough to feel it move." Cashin leaned forward slightly. "And how do you feel about that?" Terrified, she admitted quietly. "The night it seized, the pain was worse than dying. I have spent 10 years making sure it never tried again." He understood that kind of self-imposed cage. Centuries of rule had taught him how fear could build stronger walls than any stone. "No one will force it," he said. "But if you choose to try, I will be there." Isolde believes facing the memory, not fleeing it, may be the key. Elara's gaze lifted to his. "Why do you care so much whether I reclaim it?" The question hung between them, direct and unflinching. Cassian felt the bond stir in his blood, the ancient recognition that had nothing to do with politics or pity. He could not name it aloud. Not while Seraphine still wore the title of consort. Not while war hovered at the edges of every decision. "Because you have been robbed of too much already," he said instead. "And because Blackthorn needs every gift it can claim in the days ahead." She studied him for a long moment, as though weighing truth against caution. "I used to dream of mist shifting," she said at last. "Before that night. My mother could dissolve into shadow and reform across a room. She would play hiding games with me, vanish and reappear behind me, laughing. I wanted to be like her." The memory brought the ghost of a smile to her lips, soft and heartbreaking. Cassian's chest tightened. "You still can be." Footsteps in the corridor announced Victor's arrival. He entered at Cassian's nod, carrying a sealed parchment. "Word from the south," Victor said, glancing once at Elara with the careful respect he had adopted since her status changed. "Seraphine's father inquires why the servant has not yet faced justice. He threatens to withhold spring grain shipments if the matter is not resolved honorably within a fortnight." Cassian's expression turned to carved granite. "He blusters because he senses weakness. Let him." Victor hesitated. "There is more. One of the consort's maids was caught listening at the east wing doors 2 nights ago. She claimed to be delivering linens, but her hands were empty." Elara's fingers tightened on the table's edge. "She knows," Elara said quietly. "Or suspects. Seraphine always knows when the ground shifts beneath her." Cassian rose. "Then we quicken the pace. Victor, summon the Council of Elders for a closed session 3 nights from now. I will present what we have." Victor bowed and withdrew. Alone again, Cassian turned back to Elara. "You should rest. The next days will be difficult." She stood, the robe pooling around her feet. For the first time, she stepped closer, close enough that he caught the faint scent of healing herbs and winter air in her hair. "I have survived difficult for years," she said. "But I no longer wish to do it alone." The word struck deeper than any blade. Cassian reached out slowly, giving her every chance to retreat, and brushed a stray lock of hair from her cheek. His fingers lingered against her skin for the briefest moment. "You are not alone," he said, voice rough. "Not anymore." He left before the pull between them became impossible to resist. In her opulent chambers across the keep, Seraphine stood before her mirror, brushing out her golden hair with deliberate strokes. The shallow scratch on her cheek had healed without trace, too shallow, perhaps, for the story she had sold. Her spy had returned with fragments, the servant girl moved to guest quarters, guarded day and night, Lord Cassian visiting far too often under the guise of inquiry, whispers of testimonies, of a healer's examination, of delayed justice. The ground was indeed shifting. Seraphine set the brush down with precise care. If Cassian thought he could discard her, if he thought a broken servant with unusual eyes could threaten her position, he would learn how sharp a glacier's edge could be. She opened a small ebony box on her vanity. Inside lay a vial of clear liquid, enough to fell a vampire for days without killing. Beside it, a second vial containing the antidote she had already taken. A performance, perhaps, at the upcoming assembly. A tragic collapse. A poison cup traced back to the jealous servant still nursing vengeance. The clan would demand blood then. Even Cassian could not protect her. Seraphine smiled at her reflection, cold, perfect, untouchable. She had played this game before. She would play it again. And this time, the servant girl would not rise from the ashes. The great hall of Blackthorn Keep was prepared for the winter assembly, a gathering of elders, trusted warriors, and representatives from allied holdings. Banners of midnight blue and silver hung from the rafters, braziers burned with scented oils to mask the perpetual chill of stone. It was meant to be a display of unity, a reassurance after months of border tension. Instead, it would become a stage for betrayal. Seraphine moved through the preparations with flawless grace, directing servants with soft smiles and precise instructions. No one watching would have guessed that, hours earlier, she had emptied the contents of a small crystal vial into the goblet reserved for her place at the high table. The liquid was colorless, odorless, distilled from nightshade and rare southern bloom, lethal in full dose, debilitating when diluted. She had taken the antidote at dawn, a bitter draught swallowed in solitude. By the time the assembly began, her body would reject the poison violently but not fatally. Collapse, convulsions, accusations whispered in delirium, the servant girl, still alive, still vengeful, slipping venom into her cup. The clan would demand blood. Cashin would have no choice. She had played weaker hands than this and won. In the east wing, Elara stood before a tall mirror while Isolde adjusted the folds of a simple but elegant gown, deep charcoal wool with silver threading at the collar and cuffs. It was the first fine garment she had worn in years. "You will not attend the assembly," Cashin had told her the night before. "It is safer. Seraphine still believes you are merely recuperating under guard." Elara had nodded, relief and disappointment mingling. She was not ready to face the woman who had broken her, not in front of the entire clan. But as Isolde tied the final lace, Elara felt her gift stir sharply, a sudden pressure behind her eyes, a cold ripple across her skin. Malice. Clear, focused, aimed like an arrow. She froze. "What is it?" Isolde asked, sensing the shift. Intent, Elara whispered. Strong. Directed at harm. Deception. The healer's face paled. "Tonight?" Elara closed her eyes, letting the blocked gift stretch as far as it could. Images flickered, not clear visions, but impressions, a goblet, golden liquid, a beautiful face twisted in satisfaction. "She planned something at the assembly," Elara said, voice trembling. "Poison. But not to kill herself, no, to fake it. To blame me." Isolde did not question the certainty in her tone. "We must tell Lord Cashin at once." They found him in his private study with Victor, maps and testimony parchments spread across the oak table. The council session was scheduled for the following night. Tonight's assembly was meant to be ceremonial, a distraction. Elara repeated what she had sensed. Cashin listened without interruption, storm-gray eyes darkening with each word. "She has always been 3 moves ahead," he said quietly when she finished. "But not this time." He turned to Victor. "Search her chambers. Quietly. Look for vials, powders, anything that could be poison or antidote. Check the goblet on the high table before the assembly begins. Replace it if necessary." Victor bowed and left at once. Cashin faced Elara. "Your gift saved us tonight. Even blocked, it warned us." She wrapped her arms around herself. "It has never been this clear before." "Because you are no longer hiding from it," Isolde said gently. "Fear loosens when safety takes root." Cashin stepped closer, careful as always. "Stay here tonight. Guards will remain. If Seraphine's plan fails, she may grow desperate." Elara nodded, but her amber eyes held his. "Be careful. She is cornered now. Cornered things bite hardest." He allowed himself the briefest touch, a hand resting lightly on her shoulder. I have survived centuries of cornered things. This one ends tonight. The great hall filled as dusk deepened into night. Torches blazed. Musicians played low, haunting melodies on bone flutes and silver strings. Clan members mingled, voices echoing off vaulted ceilings. Seraphine made her entrance fashionably late, sapphire gown shimmering like starlit ice, golden hair braided with black pearls. She accepted greetings with radiant smiles, touching sleeves, murmuring condolences for her ordeal. Cassian watched from the high table, expression carved from stone. Victor had returned minutes before the hall opened, 2 vials found hidden in an ebony box behind a false panel in Seraphine's vanity. One empty, one containing trace antidote residue. The goblet had been switched with an identical one, clean. He had also positioned trusted guards at every exit, loyal only to him. Seraphine took her seat beside him, reaching gracefully for her goblet. Cassian's hand closed over hers before it touched the stem. "Not yet," he said, voice carrying just enough for nearby elders to hear. "There is a matter to address first." Confusion flickered across her perfect features, quickly masked. "My lord." He rose, the hall falling silent at the shift in his tone. 3 weeks ago, an incident occurred that appeared simple. My consort was assaulted by her attendant. Clan law is clear in such cases. Murmurs rippled. Seraphine's fingers tightened on the table's edge. Yet deeper inquiry has revealed corruption at the heart of this keep. Tonight, I present evidence of sustained cruelty hidden behind grace. He gestured. Victor stepped forward with the strong box of testimonies. Seraphine's mask held, but her ice-blue eyes darted to the exits. Cassian continued, voice ringing clear. Witness accounts. Medical examination. Records of prior attendants who fled or vanished. All point to one truth: the Lady Seraphine has violated every code of honor for years. Gasps echoed. Elders leaned forward. Seraphine rose, voice trembling with practiced hurt. This is madness. A lord swayed by a servant's lies. Drink, Cassian commanded suddenly, alpha authority thrumming through the word. Every vampire in the hall shifted uncomfortably. Seraphine froze, hand inches from the goblet. If you are innocent, he said coldly, you have nothing to fear from wine you oversaw yourself. Her fingers hovered, then withdrew. I am simply, not thirsty. Cassian nodded to Victor. Guards moved in. One held up the recovered vials. Another presented the ebony box. The antidote you took this morning, Cassian said. The poison you intended for that goblet. Guards witnessed you preparing it. The healer will confirm both substances. Color drained from Seraphine's face. You set a trap, she whispered. I prepared for the only move left to a cornered predator. She looked out at the hall, at faces turning from shock to disgust, and something inside her shattered. You dare, she spat, beauty twisting into ugliness. I am consort of Blackthorn. Daughter of Lord Alaric of the Southern clans. That girl was nothing, a defective servant who dared look above her station because you glanced at her once. The admission rang clear. Cassian's voice was lethal quiet. You tortured a clan member with a rare gift for 5 years because of one moment of curiosity. You murdered those who tried to help her. You planned tonight to frame her for your own poisoning. Seraphine laughed, brittle, desperate. And you would replace me with her? A broken thing who cannot even shift. She will never be whole enough to stand at your side. A new voice cut through the hall like winter wind. Lord Alaric himself strode in from the main doors, silver hair gleaming under torchlight, a retinue of southern warriors at his back. He had arrived unannounced, drawn by rumors and his daughter's urgent missives. Seraphine's face lit with desperate hope. Father. Alaric's gaze swept the hall, lingering on the vials, the testimonies, the goblet. I heard everything, he said flatly. From the corridor. Every confession. Seraphine swayed. Father, please. The southern clans sever all ties with Seraphine of Blackthorn. We disavow her actions and offer no defense. His voice carried formal finality. She speaks only for herself now. By sacrificing her, he saved his clan's honor and prevented war. Seraphine stared at him, betrayed by the one ally she had counted on absolutely. Cassian rose. By council authority and my right as lord, the union is annulled. Seraphine is stripped of title and protection. She is banished from Blackthorn lands at first light, 1 horse, basic supplies, no escort beyond the border. Guards closed in. Her final glare found Cassian. You will regret this. She will never be enough. The only regret I carry, he said softly, is that I did not see you sooner. They dragged her away, her screams echoing until stone swallowed them. The hall remained stunned into silence. Later, in the quiet of the east wing, Cassian found Elara waiting by the fire. It is over, he said simply. She stood, searching his face. Truly. Confessed. Disowned. Banished. The union dissolved. He crossed to her, exhaustion and triumph warring in his eyes. You are free. The word seemed to strike her physically. Her knees buckled. He caught her before she fell, holding her as years of held-back grief finally poured out, silent, shaking sobs against his chest. She cannot hurt you again, he murmured into her hair. Never again. Outside, snow fell thicker than before, blanketing the peaks in white. Inside, for the first time in a decade, Elara cried not from pain, but from the fragile, overwhelming possibility of safety. 6 months had passed since Seraphine's banishment. Spring had thawed the high passes, turning snowfields to wildflower meadows and filling the air with the scent of pine and new earth. Blackthorn Keep stood stronger than ever, alliances intact, borders secure, whispers of the scandal fading into cautionary legend. Elara had not returned to the East Wing guest quarters. After the annulment, Cassian had simply moved her belongings to the Lord's chambers, one quiet evening, without ceremony or question. She had not protested. Healing had come in layers. Physical scars faded under Isolde's care and Elara's own accelerating vampire nature, now unburdened by constant stress. The deepest burns left faint silver crescents, badges she no longer hid beneath high collars. The deeper wounds, fear, silence, the conviction that she deserved pain, took longer. Nightmares still woke her some evenings, heart racing with memories of Rogue's or Seraphine's cold smile. But Cassian was always there, pulling her close, murmuring ancient lullabies in the old tongue until the shadows retreated. He never rushed her. Never demanded more than she offered. They spoke of everything, his centuries of rule, the loneliness of decisions that cost lives, her childhood in the mountain cottage, the warmth of her parents' laughter, the way mist had danced around her mother's fingers like living smoke. And they worked with Isolde. Sessions began gently, breathing exercises, guided memory, small attempts to reach for the gift without forcing it. Elara learned to sit with the terror of that night instead of shoving it deeper. To remember her parents' love before their death. To feel grief without letting it cage her again. Progress was slow, then sudden. The breakthrough came on a night when thunder rolled through the peaks like distant war drums. Rain lashed the windows of the healer's tower. Lightning illuminated the room in stark flashes. Elara sat cross-legged on a woven rug, Isolde beside her, Cassian standing watch near the door, close enough to help, far enough to give space. Tell me about your mother, Isolde prompted softly. Not the end. The life. Elara's voice started hesitant, then steadied. She sang while she spun wool. Old songs about stars falling in love with mountains. Her voice was low, like wind through pines. When she mist shifted, the shadows clung to her like silk. She would wrap them around me when I was small, hide us both, then reappear laughing. A small smile curved her lips. And your father? He taught me to track by scent. Said I had the best nose in the valley. He was quiet, but his eyes smiled first. When the rogues came, her breath caught. They fought to give me time. They wanted me to live. Lightning cracked outside. Thunder followed like a heartbeat. Isolde's voice was gentle. Your gift tried to rise that night to protect them. It has been waiting ever since, honoring their sacrifice. It is not broken, Elara. Only sleeping behind walls you built to survive. Elara's hands clenched in her lap. Inside her chest, the gift stirred, restless, alive. Let it wake, Isolde whispered. Let it be free. Something inside Elara cracked, not painfully, but like river ice in spring. The gift surged forward. Her vision blurred. Skin prickled with ethereal cold. Bones lightened, substance thinning. For the first time in 14 years, the transformation did not cease. She felt herself dissolve, body becoming mist and shadow, dark waves of energy swirling where flesh had been. The shift completed. Elara reformed across the room, solid again, breathing hard but whole. Amber eyes wide with wonder, she stared at her hands, real, tangible, unburned. Cassian crossed the space in 2 strides, dropping to his knees before her. His storm-gray eyes had gone gold with his own barely leashed power. You did it, he said, voice rough with awe. She laughed, shaky, disbelieving, and the sound filled the tower like birdsong after winter. Isolde smiled, tears tracking down lined cheeks. Welcome back, Miss Daughter. 3 nights later, the attack came. Elara woke abruptly in the Lord's chambers, heart pounding before thought caught up. Her gift, now fully awake, flooded her with warning, hostile intent, multiple sources, moving through the outer wards with lethal purpose. She was out of bed in an instant, mist shifting across the room to shake Cassian awake. Intruders, she said urgently. At least 8. East wall. They mean murder. He did not waste time questioning. The mental call went out, sharp, commanding, rousing every warrior in the keep. Within minutes, defenses mobilized. The attackers were professionals, mercenaries bearing southern blades, hired by distant kin of Seraphine seeking to erase the scandal's living witnesses. Or perhaps by Seraphine herself, rogue and desperate. They breached farther than they should have, silent and skilled. But they had not counted on a fully awakened mist gift. Elara moved through the corridors like shadow itself, dissolving, reforming behind intruders, disarming with surprise, warning guards before blades could strike. Cassian met the leader in the great hall, ancient sword against hired steel. The fight was brief, brutal, decisive. When dawn painted the peaks rose and gold, the threat lay ended, bodies counted, survivors bound for questioning. Word spread quickly through the awakening keep, the once broken servant had sensed the attack first. Had turned the tide. Respect, slow at first, then overwhelming, replaced old pity. That evening, beneath a full silver moon, Cassian called the clan to the high courtyard. Torches ringed the space. Every vampire of Blackthorn stood witness, warriors, elders, servants, even young ones perched on walls. Elara stood at his side in simple midnight wool, hair loose, the faint silver scars at her throat catching firelight. Cassian turned to her, dropping to one knee, a gesture no lord had made in centuries. Elara Thorn, he said, voice carrying to every ear. You are my true mate. My blood has known it since the night I saw your scars. My heart has learned it every day since. Gasps rippled. Elders exchanged stunned glances. He took her hand gently. I ask you now, before witnesses, not from duty or politics, but because we choose each other. Will you stand as my consort? As equal in rule, in heart, in eternity? Tears spilled down her cheeks, but her voice rang clear. Yes. The courtyard erupted, cheers, howls, stamping feet that shook snow from the eaves. Later, under that same moon, the claiming took place in the sacred circle beyond the keep, ancient stones older than any clan. Cassion's bite marked her throat, deep and binding. Her own teeth broke his skin in return, equal claim, equal bond. When they came together in the privacy of the circle's heart, the mate bond sealed with a rush of power that lit the night like starfire. Elara's gift surged in answer. She shifted fully, mist dissolving into sleek shadow, reforming as something between vapor and substance, eyes glowing amber in the dark. Cassion's own form answered, part mist, part storm. They danced through the night sky, two shadows entwined, moving as one, the bonds singing with ancient rightness. When they returned to flesh at dawn, tangled in cloaks on sacred ground, Elara touched the new mark at her throat with wonder. I never thought I would have this, she whispered. Safety. Choice. Love. Cassion pulled her closer, beard tickling her skin as he pressed a kiss to the mark. You have all of it, he promised. And I will spend every night proving you worthy of it, no. Proving I am worthy of you. She smiled, full, unafraid, radiant. In the distance, Blackthorn Keep stood sentinel over lands now guarded by a consort who could sense danger before it struck, who had turned suffering into strength, who had chosen her mate as fiercely as he had chosen her. The scars remained, faint reminders of battles survived. But they no longer defined her. They were simply the map of how far she had come. The scars are still there, she said softly. Some nights I wake expecting pain. And I will be there every time, he promised, to remind you the pain is past. A soft knock interrupted. A night guard entered at Cassion's command. Forgive the intrusion, my lord, my consort. A young woman has arrived at the gates seeking sanctuary. She claims prior service to a southern lady, bears marks of abuse and proof. Elara and Cassion exchanged a look, understanding passing wordlessly. This would be their legacy, not merely justice for one, but a keep, a territory, where power served protection, not cruelty. Bring her to the east wing, Elara said. The best guest quarters. Food, clean clothes, a healer. Tell her she is safe. After the guard left, Cassion pulled her close again. You will help her. Of course. Elara looked up at him, eyes fierce with purpose. Because someone helped me. Because someone saw me when I had learned to be invisible. She placed both hands over her abdomen, where new life stirred. We will make certain no child in Blackthorn ever learns to hide their gifts out of fear. Cassion kissed her then, slow, reverent, claiming and equal all at once. Outside, the moon rose full and bright, silvering the peaks and valleys now guarded by a consort who had turned survival into sanctuary, pain into purpose, scars into stories of triumph. In the east wing, a frightened young woman cried tears of disbelief, finally believing safety was possible. Elara had not merely survived. She had transformed the darkness itself into light. And the light would endure, for her mate, for their child, for every soul under Blackthorn's ancient stones. 2 years had woven themselves into the fabric of Blackthorn Keep. The high peaks now stood sentinel over a territory transformed, not by war or conquest, but by quiet, relentless compassion. Elara stood on the eastern balcony of the Lord's chambers, dawn wind tugging at her dark hair. Below, the valleys bloomed with late summer green, rivers glinting like silver threads. She wore a simple gown of midnight wool, the claiming mark at her throat catching the first light, a permanent reminder of the night everything changed. In her arms, she cradled Lyrian, their daughter, 18 months old, with Cassion's storm-gray eyes and her mother's amber flecks. The child's tiny fingers reached for a curl of mist that danced around Elara's hand, a playful wisp summoned just for her. Lyrian laughed, the sound bright as birdsong, and the mist swirled into the shape of a tiny wolf before dissolving into sparkles. She gets stronger every day, Cassion said, stepping behind them. His arms encircled them both, beard brushing Elara's temple as he pressed a kiss there. She gets bolder, Elara corrected with a smile. Yesterday she misshifted halfway across the nursery before Marta caught her. Cassian chuckled, the deep rumble vibrating through Elara's back. A true daughter of Blackthorn. Storm and shadow. The keep had become a haven. Word of Elara's reforms had spread beyond the peaks. Young vampires from distant clans sought service at Blackthorn, not for prestige, but for fairness. Servants arrived knowing they would be fed, housed, heard. The complaint ledger, once feared as radical, was now copied in smaller holdings. Sanctuary seekers came more often, a young man fleeing a cruel southern lord, a woman bearing whip marks from an eastern household, even a child with a blocked gift like Elara's once had been. All were welcomed, healed, protected. Elara met each one personally, listening to stories that echoed her own too closely. She taught them to face their fear, to reach for their gifts without shame. Many left stronger. Some stayed, adding their strength to Blackthorn's. The training yards now included classes open to all, warriors and servants alike, learning the detection techniques Elara had refined. Her mist gift allowed her to simulate threats, teaching others to sense intent before it became blade or poison. No assassination attempt had succeeded since the night her gift fully awakened. Rogues and mercenaries learned quickly, Blackthorn saw you coming. In council, Elara's voice carried equal weight. When elders proposed alliances through political unions for younger lords, she insisted on choice, mates selected by bond, not bloodline. When border disputes arose, her ability to scout in mist form ended conflicts before they began. And through it all, Cassian stood beside her, not above, not behind, but equal. They ruled as true mates, his steel, her shadow, his ancient wisdom, her transformative vision. On this morning, as Lyrian dozed against her shoulder, Elara felt Cassian's hand settle over hers on the balcony rail. "What are you thinking?" he asked, sensing the quiet depth in her emotions through their bond. "That scars tell stories," she said softly, turning to face him. "Mine once said I was broken. That I survived only by being small and silent." She touched the faint silver lines at her wrist, remnants of burns shaped like crescents. "Now they say I was forged in fire and chose to become something stronger. That I took pain and built sanctuary from it. That I kept a promise to a dying mother, to live, and turned living into legacy." Cassian's eyes softened, centuries of loss and triumph reflected there. "And our daughter," he said, brushing a thumb across Lyrian's sleeping cheek, "will grow up knowing her mother's strength. Knowing that power is not taken, it is given to those who need it most." Elara leaned into him, the family fitting together like pieces of a single shadow. "I used to think survival was the end," she whispered. "Endure. Outlast. That was victory." She looked out over the territory, over fields worked by free hands, over halls filled with laughter, over borders guarded by the vigilant and the once afraid. "I was wrong. Survival was only the beginning." Below, in the courtyard, Marta waved up at them, apron dusted with flour, a basket of fresh bread on her arm. Beside her stood the latest sanctuary seeker, a young woman with healing burns on her arms, watching the lord and consort with wonder. Elara lifted a hand in greeting. Mist curled from her fingers, shaping briefly into a protective wing before dissolving into morning light. The young woman's face lit with hope. Cassian pressed his lips to Elara's temple. "You kept your mother's command," he murmured. "You survived. But you did so much more." Elara smiled, full, fierce, unafraid. "I thrived. And in the years that followed, Blackthorn's legacy became legend, the keep where shadows protected the vulnerable, where a once broken girl rose to rule with compassion sharper than any blade, where scars were honored as proof of battles won. Lyrian would grow up never knowing fear as cage. She would know it only as the fire that forges strength. And under the eternal watch of mist and storm, Blackthorn Keep stood not as a fortress of ancient hierarchy, but as a beacon. A promise kept. A story completed, not in silence, but in light. The scars remained. But they shone now, like stars against the endless night.